This meeting is being recorded. Excellent. Now, okay, today we're going to be looking at the scripture readings for the solemnity of the most holy body and blood of Christ. The shorter name is the Latin name, the Feast of Corpus Christi. And we're going to start with the reading from Exodus, and Jim Owen's going to take us through that. All yours, Jim.
Okay. A reading from the book of Exodus. When Moses came to the people and related all the words and ordinances of the Lord, they all answered with one voice, "We will do everything that the Lord has told us." Then Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord, and rising early the next day, he erected at the foot of the mountain an altar and 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. Then, having sent certain young men of the Israelites to offer holocausts and sacrifice young bulls as peace offerings to the Lord, Moses took half of the blood and put it in large bowls. The other half he splashed on the altar. Taking the book of the covenant, he read it aloud to the people, who answered, "All that the Lord has said, we will heed and do." Then he took the blood and sprinkled it on the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all of these works of his."
Okay, thank you, Jim. Now, as he was reading, if any of these words or phrases struck you or any images came to your mind, please unmute and share those with us.
Took blood and sprinkled it on the people.
Something about all the people.
He took blood
Oh,
and sprinkled it on all the people.
took blood and sprinkled it on all the people. That would ruin your Sunday best. I like to sling holy water in Easter time, and when people complain that I get them too wet, I said, just be glad I'm not Moses. Okay, the one that struck me was he wrote down all the words of the Lord. Before I studied this passage, I didn't realize that this meant Exodus 20, 21, 22, and 23, 4 chapters of the Bible. That would take a while. So, let's see. First of all, I'll start with an overview of the book of Exodus. You can break it into 2 parts. The first 18 chapters, that's the story of the Hebrews being freed from their slavery to Pharaoh and their journey to Sinai. And then the second part of Exodus is about Israel at Sinai. And this divides into roughly 4 parts. First, the divine covenant with Israel. That's our section today. And then this is followed by the divine command to build and maintain the tabernacle in the desert. And then there's a story about apostasy and the renewal of covenant. And finally, the actual building of the tabernacle and the descent of the glory into the tabernacle. So some comments on the big picture. This outline does not represent history as we understand it today. Think of it as a compilation of separate stories written down after family reunions over a period of centuries. You have a family that's existed for a long time and they've been reuniting for a long time. Imagine that the family finally gets a talented writer who now has access to picture books and diaries from the past century, And this person gathers all of this scattered material and puts it into one narrative. That's kind of an analogy for how the book of Exodus came to be. The glory, the Hebrew word is kabod. It's analogous to our Catholic doctrine of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. The main difference is that we Catholics see the real presence of Christ in the tabernacle of every Catholic church in the world. By contrast, the divine glory was present at first only in the tabernacle in the wilderness, and then eventually in the temple in Jerusalem. And only if one understands this can you really appreciate the shock of the eventual destruction of the Jerusalem temple. That was the only place for the Jews that God was really present. So, an overview of the covenant making section. This is a 6-chapter process in Exodus, chapters 19 through 24. I'm taking section 2A from the previous outline, and it begins with Israel encountering the Lord at the mountain. Then we get the terms of the covenant in chapters 20 to 23. First come the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments, and then the rest of the laws, which scholars call the covenant code. Then we get the ratification of the covenant. And our section today is focused on this. This ratification has 2 parts: the popular assent, that's our section for today, which is followed by Moses ascending the mountain to receive the tablets along with a covenant meal. And that covenant meal is, okay, but that covenant meal is actually verses 9, 10, and 11. And then Moses going up alone, that's the second part. Again, this is not history in our modern sense. It's the biblical storyline. It's a complex mixture of many different literary genres. So an expansion of the section on popular assent. First, there's the scene between the Lord and Moses, and this is not part of our reading. We pick up in verse 3. Then comes the scene 2, which is Moses and the people, and it's divided into 2 different days. And then scene 3 is the Lord and the leaders of Israel celebrating a covenant meal. So I'm going to go ahead and read through. I have outlined the Revised Standard Version, and this will count for our second reading of the passage. This isn't in our Sunday reading, but it's worth hearing. And he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu," those are Aaron's sons, "and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship afar off. Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him." Then we get the Moses and the people, 2 days. Day 1, covenant making begins, and this is where our reading starts. Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord. Is this the 10 words? The Decalogue is sometimes the first one for Jews is, "I am the Lord your God." And I said to David Klein, "Rabbi David, that's not a commandment. I'm the Lord your God." He says, "That's not a problem for us. We don't call them the 10 commandments. We call them the 10 words." And that's what Decalogue literally means. Deca is the Greek word for 10, and logos for word. So, and all the ordinances, and all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words which the Lord has spoken to us, we will do." And Moses wrote all the words, that would be Exodus 20 to 23 of the Lord. So now we're not surprised that it's the second day. Moses had a busy day after he had told the people this, what he had learned orally. Now he's got to write it all down. He rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 pillars according to the tribes of Israel. And the altar is a symbol of the Lord, and the 12 pillars, they're a symbol for Israel. And he sent young men of the people of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he threw against the altar, which symbolizes God, the Lord. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the hearing of the people. That's Exodus 20 to 23. And they said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient. And Moses took the blood and threw it on the people. So half of the blood has been thrown onto the Lord, onto the altar. The other half gets thrown onto the people, and said, behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. And then I'm going to go ahead and read scene 3. The Lord and the leaders of Israel celebrate a covenant meal. And since we're reading this on the Feast of Corpus Christi, I'm surprised they didn't include it. Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. And there was, as it were, a pavement of sapphire stone under his feet, like the very heaven for clearness. And he did not lay his hand on the chief men of the people of Israel. They beheld God and ate and drank. So I have some comments from Rabbi Nathan Sarna. I got this from the JPS, the Jewish Publication Society Commentary on the Torah. The covenant-making process involves 4 chapters, Exodus 19 to 24. The first step is the unanimous popular assent to the divine initiative. God takes the first step. And they say, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. After hearing, Moses mediates the commandments orally to the people. So after hearing Exodus 20 to 23, the people bind themselves to obedience with the same formula. All that the Lord has commanded, we will do. This is where our reading begins today. The terms are then put into writing. Exodus 20 to 23 is now put into writing. Then the covenant is ritually enacted. The ritual includes blood, and it ends with the response of the people. And all that the Lord has commanded, we will do. That's the final verse of today's reading. So the ritual includes the sprinkling with blood and also the reading. Notice that we have on Sunday, we have a word followed by a sacrament. Here, it's a sacramental gesture, sprinkling of blood followed by word. And then the covenant meal is celebrated, verses 9 to 11. Now, the passage about the covenant meal fascinates me. Normally, in the Old Testament, no one can see God and live. But here, those partaking in a covenant meal, they're eating and drinking, they are protected guests under the Near Eastern custom of hospitality. When you invite someone into a meal, they are your guest. You have to treat them nice. And the Lord has invited these people to a meal. And so they get to see him and they don't die. Behold, he did not lay his hand on them. This is very unusual for the Old Testament. And there is a line in the Gospel of John where it says, no one has ever seen God. And there are various Old Testament traditions. According to the majority tradition in the Old Testament, Moses, nobody gets to see God, but Moses is an exception. And when Miriam and Aaron grumble and there's sibling rivalry, and finally God rebukes them and says, why were you not afraid to grumble against Moses, my servant? If I want to talk to somebody else, I come in a dream or in a vision, but I speak to Moses face to face as one person speaks to another. So why were you not afraid to grumble against Moses? So there is an Old Testament tradition that Moses used to see God face to face, but the Gospel of John is taking sides against that. But there's an even more rare tradition in the Old Testament, and that's the one that we see today, is that these people got to see God. Let's see. And so we've gone through, and there's no need to read the second translation. So at this point, are there any questions, comments, or observations? Okay, well, we'll stop recording here.